It's 1:31. I'd like to call the November 19th, 2012 meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Commission to order. Roll call, Commissioner Witcher.
Here, sir.
Commissioner Littlefield. Not here. Commissioner Newton.
Here, sir.
Commissioner Hale. Here, sir. Commissioner Schuline. Commissioner Schuline's not here. Commissioner Jenkins. Here. Commissioner George. Commissioner Yonkel. I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes of the October 15th meeting, please.
Move approval as submitted.
We have a motion to approve the minutes of the October 15th meeting by Commissioner Witcher. Second. And we have a second from Commissioner Hale. Do we have any talk on this item? Okay, could you clear number 2, please? Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Witcher to approve the minutes of the October 15th meeting and a second by Commissioner Hale. Votes, please. Very good, thank you. The report on license and taxi record service will be in January of 2013. There's no item on the consent docket, item 4. We go to item 5. Item 5A, Todd Crowell, Frankfurt Shore Bruiser, Inc., 5801 Broadway Extension, Suite 500, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73118-7436, to consider the installation of a mid-block pedestrian crossing on North Utah Avenue, approximately 180 feet north of Northwest 23rd Street. Do we have someone to talk on this item? We have 3 people to talk on this item. Who wants to go first? Whoever's, all right. May I have your name and your address, please? And you have up to 5 minutes.
Okay, Mark Woods. I'm with Del Rogers Training Center, and the address is 2501 North Utah Avenue. And what we are asking for is we have a crosswalk, and it allows our individuals. We serve people with developmental disabilities, and we have a new building on the east side of the Utah. The crosswalk would allow our individuals with disabilities to cross from the west side to the east side, directly from the building that they're currently in to the new building. We would like to, as a safety measure, add the flashing lights as well. So that is our request.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
We have 2 more. Do you need to speak, the other 2 people? No? Just in case we need you? Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Could we have staff input, please?
Okay, you've got all staff comments before you relative to our study conducted at the area. With respect to the request for warning flashers, this particular street, which is already posted at 25 miles an hour, it's got a school zone on it, and our school zone is not eligible for warning flashers due to the way the speed limit is posted. Action on approving a mid-block pedestrian crossing location would be at the discretion of the Commission. The roadway alterations constructed will need to be verified to be in accordance with the ADA. At this point in time, it's not known whether or not the pedestrian crossing facilities were constructed that way. If approved, the city will install pedestrian crossing warning signs and pavement markings as needed to mark the location in accordance with the manual on uniform traffic control devices. Now, the applicant, when we first received the request, their representative with Frankfurt Shore Bruiser was informed that they could pursue, through the revocable permitting process, a warning flashers that could be installed if the Commission were to approve the crossing. So the only action presented for today would be to approve would be for consideration of the mid-block pedestrian crossing on Utah. The addition of warning flashers would be subject to the Commission's approval of this action today, in which case from that point forward the applicant can go and file for a revocable permit to install warning flashers on their own.
All right, do we have a motion concerning item 5A?
Motion to approve item 5A.
Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5A from Commissioner Newton. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Jenkins. Do we have any talk on this item?
I have a couple of questions just to clarify, so that by approving this, the city would be responsible for adding a couple of pre-warning signs and perhaps a sign right at the crosswalk? But
Right.
the city would not be responsible for installing or maintaining the flashing light signs?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct, yeah. So we'll do is advanced pedestrian crossing signs, at the intersection, and we will go ahead and update the pavement markings so that they're in conformance with the manual, which basically prescribes, they've got continental crosswalks marked there right now, and what we would do is we would go through and make sure that the striping on those were 2 feet, each stripe would be 2 feet wide and 8 feet long, and right now they're a little bit shorter than 8 feet.
Okay, and then if the city surveys the existing condition and finds it doesn't meet ADA, you notify the applicant or the owner?
Right, because we won't go out there and mark the crosswalk until such time that it is fully ADA compliant.
Okay. All right. And then,
And who has to make it ADA compliant?
That would be the party that constructed it in the first place. So it would be Dale Rogers Training Center or their contractor.
then I had a couple of questions just about the drawing. There's what appear to be property lines shown crossing the right-of-way. What do those indicate?
And as you come up to the mic, if I could have your name and your address, please.
I'm Todd Crowell. I'm with Frankfurt Short Brugia, the project manager for the architect. I think that was just because we did a blow-up detail. Oh, I think we did a blow-up detail, and so that's just to show the area involved.
Well, I'm not talking about the detail bubble, but
Yeah.
there's actually what appears to be, there's a, long dash, dot, dot, long dash, and they occur several places along the block, and so I was wondering, are those to indicate easements or
No,
some interruption of the right-of-way?
honestly,
Okay.
I can't tell you what they represent, but they're not a property line, they're not an
Okay.
easement. I think it was more, whoever drafted this was trying to identify an area
Okay,
involved.
okay. I have no other questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, so we have item 5A, a motion to approve from Commissioner Newton and seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. There's no further talk on the items. May I have your vote, please? Okay, item is approved. Item 5B, Tom DuVerney, Safety and Compliance Manager, Great Plains Coca-Cola Bottling Company, 600 North May Avenue, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73107, to consider the installation of a mid-block pedestrian crossing on North Quapaw Avenue, approximately 750 feet north of West Reno Avenue, and Northwest 5th Street, approximately 210 feet east of North May Avenue. We have anybody talk on this item? Nobody talk on this item? We have staff input, please.
You've got our staff comments before you. These are mid-block pedestrian crossings, basically between some of Coca-Cola's office and manufacturing facilities in 2 different locations of the city. Both streets, Quapaw and Northwest 5th Street, are primarily just commercial, industrial type roadways. They've got off-site parking lots on the opposite side of the streets from their office and bottling plants, and they've submitted a request for mid-block pedestrian crossings. You can see from the drawings that we provided that there are existing pedestrian warning signs in advance of the crossings, but they are just wanting marked crosswalks to delineate the locations. You'll notice in our comments that we said that in the event that they wanted to pursue these things, they would need to make sure that any pathways that they constructed were fully in compliance with ADA. For their facility next to their, for the crossing on Northwest 5th Street next to their office facility off of May Avenue, they'd need to realign some crosswalks and put in, the necessary wheelchair ramps at that location. And over on Quapaw Avenue, they'd have to do a little bit more restructuring, because right now their crosswalk goes from one side of the street where their office is, and the receiving end is in a driveway, which is not a compliant crossing per the Americans with Disabilities Act. So there's no applicant for you to discuss the matter with. Actions at the discretion of the commission.
All right, thank you. All right, do we have a motion concerning item 5B?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Commissioner Newton to approve item 5B. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Jenkins. Do we have any talk on this item?
I guess question for staff is, all that has to be done, brought up to ADA before the city gets involved at all?
That's correct.
Painting or putting up signs?
That's correct, because we won't mark a location that's not in conformance with the ADA, and since the request is coming from private industry and they're wanting to create it specifically to serve their uses, it would be, incumbent upon them to make an accessible route, which we will then go ahead and sign and mark.
Okay. Does it become, if this gets approved, does it become necessary for them to do it? I mean, do they have to do it now since they've applied? They have to bring that space up and put the ramps in and stuff?
No, we'll go ahead and let them know that depending on the outcome of the vote, if it's approved, we'll let them know there's approved, but it's subject to these requirements, and then it'll be incumbent upon them to get plans prepared, get the necessary permits to make modifications in the public right-of-way, and following that, the city will go ahead and, like I said, install the warning signs and pavement markings.
And if, I should have asked this on the last applicant too, but if they call up and say, okay, we're all ADA now, who is responsible for surveying it and verifying that it complies with ADA?
Field services,
Okay.
because they've got the trained inspectors and the equipment that can verify ramp grades and everything else.
Okay.
Okay, any more talk on this item? Okay, item 5B, we have a motion from Commissioner Newton to approve it, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. May I have your votes, please? Okay, the item is approved. Item 5C, I'm the applicant, so I'm going to remove myself from the Traffic Commission, and I'm going to pass the chair along to Commissioner Witcher.
Okay, so item 5C, the applicant, Walter Kula, 14836 Southeast 75th Street, Oklahoma City. The request is to consider a request to change the speed limit on South Choctaw Road from a point approximately 190 feet north of the westbound I-40 on and off ramps to a point approximately 680 feet north of Southeast 71st Street from 50 miles an hour to 40 miles an hour. And as is our custom, is there anyone who'd like to speak to this item? Okay, I just note that the applicant, if we have specific questions, may be available to answer them. Staff report?
Okay, you've got our comments before you. In this particular area, the speed limit on Choctaw Roads dropped to 40 miles an hour in the vicinity of the I-40 interchange. What the request is to do is to expand that 40-mile-an-hour zone further to the north from where the westbound I-40 on and off ramps are. This would take it about 1,500 feet further north of where it currently is, which would take it about 600 feet beyond Southeast 71st Street. The prevailing 85th percentile speed in the area is about 54. The posted limit through the area of request is 50 miles an hour. And staff typically doesn't recommend the establishment of a speed limit that's inconsistent with the prevailing 85th percentile speed. However, because we've got a couple locations that don't have sufficient decision site distance based on the way the speed limit is posted, in this particular case, we're recommending that you consider the request as submitted. It would be advisable to consider lowering the speed limit in areas where we don't have adequate decision site distance. And I want to make one other note, and that is in the 2007 general obligation bond, there was a traffic signal that's included to be installed at the intersection of Southeast 71st and Choctaw Road. And that's the intersection where we probably have we're a little bit short on decision site distance, but installation of a traffic signal would remedy that for residents who use Southeast 71st Street. So action is at the discretion of the commission.
So just to paraphrase, you might be this is different from a normal staff recommendation to fit the speed limit to the geographical conditions and the site decision, the real conditions of the topography and where the curb cuts are and such.
Right. It's about as close as we can get, because the only way to truly meet the city's decision site distance requirements would be to reduce its speed limit to 35, which on a 50-mile-an-hour facility is probably is not a realistic expectation. But like I said, there's an existing 40-mile-an-hour zone that's that surrounds the I-40 interchange. This is just an expansion of it to the north.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion on this item?
Move approval of the application.
Okay. Motion to approve by Commissioner George, and a second.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Hale. Is there any other discussion on this item?
How long is it going to be before the actual traffic signals are going to be put in there at 71st and Choctaw?
I don't have that information. We can get
Okay.
it. We can try and dig it up for you.
I'm just curious to know. I have people I know that live right there, and they're concerned about, well, if there's supposed to be one, when is it supposed to happen, since it was quite a while ago when it was approved.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. Oh, okay. Very good. Any other questions or discussion on this? All right. Then I have a motion to approve by Commissioner George, a second by Commissioner Hale. Can I have your votes, please? And the item is approved. And with that, I relinquish chair duties back to Commissioner Kula.
Item 5D, John Falcone, Director, Riverdale Homeowners Association, Inc., 2513 Southwest 120th Street, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73170, to consider a request for a signed left turn restriction effective from 8:45 a.m. to 9:15 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. school days from westbound Southwest 119th Street at Long Lake Boulevard, or a signal-regulated left turn restriction from southbound Southwest 119th Street at Long Lake Boulevard. Do we have anybody talking this item? No, sir. Nobody talking this item? Staff recommendation, please, or summary?
Okay, you've got our comments before you. Basically, the request that Mr. Falcone submitted was in response to, I guess, neighborhood association that was desiring to mitigate a traffic nuisance in their area. To put it in simplest terms, a few years back, the commission approved a left turn restriction, basically a right turn only at Southwood Drive, over which is about 800 feet to the east, and it provides access to Fisher Elementary School. That was in response to a request from the principal, Becky Jackson. What has happened in the time since then is that since vehicles exiting, after they've dropped off their kids, that are now exiting Southwood Drive, only have a right turn option, so drivers that ordinarily would have turned left and continued their trip east on Southwest 119th Street, some vehicles are using Long Lake Boulevard as a means to turn around and head back to the east. So you can see that we did back in May of this year, we were able to go out there and do basically a destination study, and I had staff observe the movements morning and afternoon at the times that Mr. Falcone indicated were issues, and they went ahead and counted vehicles. You'll notice that in the morning, of 50 vehicles that entered the neighborhood turning left, that turned right out of Southwood onto 119th Street and then left onto Long Lake Boulevard, 45 of 50 used Long Lake Boulevard as a means of turning around and returning on their trip heading east on Southwest 119th Street. In the afternoon, it was less than half. The overall numbers are not that great. I mean, you had 50 in the morning, a total of 45 in the morning, and a total of 28 in the afternoon. So the way that we had presented this was Mr. Falcone had requested a signed restriction that would kind of mirror what's in place over at Southwood Drive. We're presenting this in a form where it could be regulated by flashers, which would be controlled by the same system we use to operate our school zone flashers, which would allow us to tailor it. We can fine-tune it if needs be, and if the school schedule changes, it allows us to make amendments to the flashing times as school times change, as opposed to installing a signed restriction, which would be probably difficult for most drivers to see, since they'd be in the center lane trying to turn left, as opposed to being on the right side of the road, which is typically where our sign would have to be installed. So, like I said, you've got our comments before you. There's not an applicant for you to discuss the options with, so action on the matter at this point in time will be at the discretion of the commission.
Okay, so concerning item 5D, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the flashing no left turn to be coordinated with the school zone times.
So as modified by staff input?
That's correct.
Okay, so we have a motion. I'm sorry? Well, sign regulated, that's what you're talking about. A signal regulated left turn. That's the added request from you, from staff input, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that would be the part
Okay.
two, approval of the item for part
Okay, so you're wanting to,
approve part two of the city's
Yeah.
recommendation.
so item 5D2, okay? So we have a motion from Commissioner Hale to approve item 5D, Part 2. We have a second.
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Jenkins. Do we have any comment on this item?
Just like to add, this seems like it might be a candidate for a signal light. Is that, what's your thoughts about that? Signal light at Southwood and 119th.
The installation of a signal hasn't been studied at this point in time, but really what you're looking at is kind of a cause and effect type situation. The cause being the turn restriction from Southwood Drive, the left turn restriction out of Southwood onto Southwest 119th Street. Basically what you've done is, there are some drivers have opted that, in order to continue their trip back to the east, they're finding the first and most convenient location where they can turn around and head back that way. So, the approval of the item, it may locate or relocate the problem elsewhere, and then again, it may not. So, I was about to say, the only other means to help facilitate traffic movement out of Southwood would be to potentially look at a traffic signal there, but none has been requested at this point in time.
Sure.
Anybody else have anything to comment on item 5D, subpart 2? Okay, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Hale, item 5D, subpart 2, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. May I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Item 5E, Jason Henderson, P.E., 12515 Carriageway, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73142, to consider the establishment of all-way stop control at the intersection of Pebblestone Parkway and Northwest 127th Street. We have two people that want to talk on this, so Mr. Henderson, would you like to go first? You're the applicant. May I have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Sure. Thank you. Jason Henderson. My address is 12515 Carriageway, Oklahoma City, 73142. And I'd first like to thank you all for giving me an opportunity to speak on this. This has been an important situation for our neighborhood. We've requested an application back in 2009 and was denied based on the traffic counts. Our application was due to an accident back in 2009. Since 2009, I personally became involved when my family was in an accident back in the summer. I've got a wife and two little girls that were 4 and 6 that was not hurt, thankfully, but as you can look through my application, you can see significant damage to the car, and the kids were about 15 feet from being center punched by a car coming down Pebblestone Parkway. I understand the code is based on traffic volume. I've spoke to the local Hefner Police Sergeant Epperly up there about the situation, and also the reporting officer at the time of the accident. Sergeant Epperly has been a wonderful guy that's come to our homeowners meetings and spoke to us about numerous things, including this. But him and the reporting officer both indicate our ward, Ward 8, does not have much patrol to begin with. And I understand that, and I appreciate all the work that those guys do. And they have been out patrolling since the summer. And Secretary Cha, I believe your staff has also asked them to patrol too, and we have seen them out there, and we do appreciate it. But the issue here is not more on the traffic volume, but the speed that's on this road. We believe if we had an all-way stop sign there, and the traffic that came through there, it's local traffic, they're going to realize that stop sign's there and start recognizing the fact that they've got to stop and give our people that are in our neighborhood a chance to get out on that street, a chance without getting hit. I look at this application and see that there's a situation in here where 3 accidents, it becomes another check mark for yes. I don't want that 3rd accident to happen because it could be bad. Again, I just ask you to look through the application. I understand the code, but this is more about traffic speed, and we believe that would make a difference. And, you know, I'm sure you all have a copy of this, but when I showed up to the scene and seen fire trucks and police, not knowing what happened to my family in my neighborhood, that shouldn't be that way in a neighborhood. Those girls mean everything to me, and I appreciate your all's support on this consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, did you want us to go ahead and speak? Please make sure to give us your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes to talk.
I won't take that much time. Name's Thurman Edwards, 12512 Chateau Road, Oklahoma City. I'm not privy to this application. I wasn't privy to that until Friday when I talked with the secretary, and he asked me to come down and express some of my views. But my house backs right up to Pebblestone, and I have been real proactive in probably the last month or 2 working with the police department, and they have been very, very helpful. We have adequate 25-mile-an-hour signs on Pebblestone, but it's just a cruel hard fact. They do not abide by that. It's anything goes, basically. The road's about a mile and a quarter, kind of isolated, not too heavily traveled during the day, but in the mornings and the evenings, it's our neighborhood calls it Pebblestone Speedway. And like I wasn't privy to this information until Friday, but I would just like to bring it to your all's attention that we do have a considerable speeding problem on Pebblestone. And the police department has been, the officers I have worked with have been very helpful. Patrolling helps, but nothing like them hiding in those entrances going into the individual neighborhoods. I was out sitting in the backyard the other night, and my wife said, "What's the deal with the traffic? It's going slow." I said, "I bet there's officers sitting down there at 124th, and these people see him as they come by, and they slow down." And that sticks with them. Next time they come through, they're kind of looking. I don't know what your decision is going to be on the stop signs. That's your all's business, but we do have a speeding problem, and would appreciate if you would give us some help on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we're going to have staff input, please.
All right, you've got our study summary before you. One thing that's been highlighted in the public comment is that speeding on Pebblestone Parkway has been reported. Our own speed study found that the 85th percentile speed during our study was 40 miles an hour. This road is clearly posted as 25. The municipal codes and state law both have sections addressing traffic control at the intersections between basically private facilities and public streets, and both of them refer to indicating that that private streets have to the traffic on those streets must yield at where they intersect with public streets. 127th Street's private on both sides of the intersection. It's gated on both sides. The gate on the west side of the intersection is currently just chained shut. It does not appear to be in use at all. Traffic volumes at the intersection currently are out of conformance with what we would ordinarily consider for all-way stop control. However, one of the big underlying considerations here is basically disregard for the speed limit of the area. The Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices prescribes that stop signs are not to be used as speed control devices, as they have a tendency to breed contempt for their use in other locations. Pebblestone Parkway is also one of those streets that's built to it's a divided roadway. It's just a two-lane roadway ultimately, but each of the lanes is 20 feet wide because it's got a center median in it. It's got very few access points on it, and so consequently I can see where it would be a street where some drivers may choose to disregard the 25 because it looks like it's built to serve higher speeds. However, there's no portion of this roadway that passes through anything other than residential development. So at that point in time, you've got, we had a report from the police department because when we concluded our study and found that the 85th percentile was 40 miles an hour, we turned it over to the police department for enforcement, and I can let Officer Tompkins report on the findings of the study and their activities.
What we did is we sent a couple of motorcycle officers out for, I think, 3 days, and the total enforcement duration was 4 hours that they spent out there. The speeding citations written were 18 in that 4 hours, and the fastest was 51 miles per hour. So it was double the legal limit. As I was telling them before, generally when they build these neighborhoods, sometimes the officers don't know the problems people are experiencing until we point it out to them. And so once the problem is pointed out, not only Hefner officers, but our motorcycle officers who are out of Bricktown Division, they do the entire city. They'll generally make it their stop sometime during the week, sometime every day. But now that they know about it, I can assure you that they'll be out there on a regular basis, especially when people are doing double the legal limit. But that was what that's just up to this point that we've gotten. And like I said, it was just, I had to get the totals in by today, so there'll be more probably this week sometime.
All right, so at this point in time, since the request itself is out of conformance with the city's requirements for the use of all-way stop, we don't have cause to recommend the installation of those stops at this point in time. It may be well worth our effort to get further enforcement through the police department and see if that has an influence on driver behavior. Barring that, we may be starting to investigate the use of permanently installed driver feedback signs to help re-educate drivers. They're not enforcement tools, but they are re-education tools. I mean, there's been an article in the newspaper fairly recently about how the city of Nichols Hills has got a couple of those things up. We've got a couple driver feedback trailers, but they're mobile units, and we'll deploy them like a week at a time in various locations to help do a little bit of re-education, but they're not for permanent installation.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion concerning item 5E?
Here we go again, I guess, but, this road is such a long, it's a mile and a quarter, I mean, it really is a racetrack. I don't know if you guys took the time to drive over there or ever been on it, but it's just a long, walled road that I can see where, 85% of the cars are going over 40 miles an hour, and, it's just, it looks to me like a great spot for a stop sign. I don't know if the captain would like to agree with me on that or not, if he would like to see a stop sign in there.
Hold on. So your motion, sir?
The motion ends up being without his comment, but I'd like to hear it. But I think it's a great spot for four-way stop. Yes, I'd make a motion to approve his application.
So we have a motion from Commissioner George to approve item 5E.
I'll second.
And we have a second from Commissioner Witcher. Do we have any talk on this item?
Did I understand staff correctly that this will violate state code?
Well, the way this, okay, well, I won't say it's a violation. The state statute addresses this is in Title 47 of state statutes, and basically it's their motor vehicle code, but it also governs the determination of right-of-way at intersections. It's the same code that establishes the ordinary right-of-way rules. So basically, when you pull up to an intersection, whether it's uncontrolled intersection, the vehicle on the right typically has the right-of-way. So you've got state section 47.11.404 regarding a vehicle entering highway from private road or driveway, and it says the driver of a vehicle about to enter or cross a highway, and the definition for a highway is basically any public roadway, from a private roadway or driveway shall yield the right-of-way to all vehicles approaching on said highway. And then in the municipal code, we've got something that echoes that. That's in Chapter 32, that's 32.220, and that reads very similarly, the driver of a vehicle about to enter, leave, or cross a highway from or into a private road or driveway shall yield the right-of-way to all vehicles approaching on the highway. So basically, the approval of all-way stop at or stops on Pebblestone would be out of conformance with those code criteria. I don't think that even if they're out of conformance, I don't necessarily know if that would make them wrong per se.
So this is different than two public streets where we say we want to put a four-way stop up at two public streets. We can do that even though it may not meet the traffic count and all this. Where here, you're saying there's state guidance that says private roads will yield to the main road.
That's the way of the code.
That's the difference.
Correct.
Than what we usually see. Okay. Joe, I'm sorry.
I'm not really sure. I believe the commission has discretion in this case.
So like for safety reasons, if we determine that it would be safest for the people living in the private area coming on the private street, we could go ahead and make a stop on Pebblestone Parkway for the safety of the people coming out.
I believe so.
Okay. Is that what you were asking, sir? Okay. Very good.
Are there any type of signs at this point to limit traffic coming from the addition onto the street?
No, currently there are not, but we've since we were out there, we've issued service requests to install yield signs for traffic coming out from 127th Street onto Pebblestone, because that would be in conformance with the municipal code and state law.
So are they effective or have they been installed?
I have not heard if they've been installed yet. We just sent out the service request a couple of weeks ago.
In which we would officially be notified next meeting in that report where they approve yield signs. We've allowed them to do yield signs. Okay, so in a short amount of time, there should be yield signs coming out of the private area to make it known. Is that what you were asking?
Right.
Okay, and then we'll officially be told. And just before we press on, Mr. George, you were asking?
Yeah.
Why don't you re-ask?
The captain whether or not he thought it would be a good idea to put his stops there.
Generally, when I see long roads like this and outside of neighborhoods, which they're building a lot of them, both north and south, I like to see something that we say it slows drivers down. The next problem we'll have is people running the stop sign.
Well,
But if it prevents someone from getting seriously injured, there's only been 2 out there in the amount of time, but unfortunately the third one could be the one we're all wishing we'd set somebody down. So,
Okay.
but personally, I would like to see a stop sign, but that's, you guys vote on that. So.
Thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Henderson. Was the accident in your family at this intersection? Your wife was coming out of 127th?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
In fact, the one back in 2009 was the same thing. So we all inside the neighborhood know that we need to yield going out. It's just, we didn't really touch on it much. If I could maybe just follow up just a little bit. The sight distance in the direction that the cars are coming that created the accident is 315 feet, which meets code for 25 mile an hour. The problem is, at 40 mile an hour, the sight distance is 490 feet. That's 36% greater distance that we need to be able to pull out safely. That's why we're requesting a stop sign, so that we have an opportunity to pull out safely.
Is that sight distance when you're looking south out of 127th? Because I did not get out to drive this, but as I'm looking at the layout, there's just a slight curve. It looks like it'd be a real problem to see anybody coming northbound when you're exiting to go west. You're facing west on 127th. If you're looking at northbound traffic, there just seems like a slight curve that could be a problem.
That's the problem right there on
Okay.
page 2.
So, and Commissioner George brought up a good point. This is a long strip. Stops right there, although in favor, you've still got a lot of stretch where people are going to still be doing 51 miles an hour.
Good.
And there are other areas, it looks like, where people have to come out onto that road, not just at your intersection. So you're not asking about the rest of the stretch of the road, but I am. What do we do with the rest of that? I mean, the stop may help here, but there will be violators that will blow those stop signs, and then they have to be enforced.
Well, looking at this map, doesn't it look like that's a major exit point for the current amount of houses? Probably what you're asking
It
is
does. I'm just
further
saying,
up there, is that going to be new housing coming in, especially on the left-hand side there? Or what's that on the left-hand side of the road up on top of the
Yeah, up
picture?
on the left side, that's actually in the commission's hands right now, I believe, for Mark Dale, his subdivision. And I believe
So there'll be more.
the 2020 traffic study for his, if his was fully built out, is actually over 2,700 vehicles per day, which would exceed the amount. So it is a great question.
Even south of the intersection, you got some extreme speeding violations going on here. I imagine that you're going to have some remedy with these stops, but while we're talking about this stretch, I would suggest we consider what's the solution for that whole stretch beyond just the stop signs here. I think what Stuart is putting out on the table, possibly those, tell me what they're called again, where you repeat the speed back to...
Driver feedback signs?
Yeah.
Because it's
Those seem to remind me on Turner Turnpike that I'm doing 56 instead of 55 as I approach the construction. I'm a law abider, so it matters to me. But it seems like those are somewhat effective. Or we're watching your speed, those kinds of things. What can be done on this whole stretch in addition to the stop signs to address speed? If stop signs in themselves do not address speed, what will for this whole stretch?
That's a good point. You would think that when you build a road, you would build a road for the area that it's made to be in, which this is a housing area, so like you were saying, they're going up around everywhere, these feeder roads, and they're making them so wide open that it just seems to flow. The answer would be long-term future, like for new neighborhoods, would be to find some way to get some zigs and some zags in the feeder road. And I've seen that in some feeder roads where even though it's going from point A to point B and it's wide open, they made some zigging and some zagging, and 25 was the right speed. Like you said, this is just a straight line shot. What you're asking, Mr. Childs, what can we do south of that area?
And
there
north.
seems to be some
And north.
some entry points.
There are people entering onto this beyond just that intersection, and you got people going real fast.
See, and I think that the north ones will probably come up once they start building in that area, and like he was talking about, once we get up over the 2,000 vehicle count, once that area gets built.
I don't feel like I'm asking my question properly. I mean, the road is the road is today. Is there anything that can be done to address speed for this whole, the over mile length of it beyond just the stop signs?
Well, that and enforcement, I was about to say, because, you know, we've got the regulatory limit posted at 25. Drivers are disregarding it. You know, those that disregard probably need to be reminded that what they need to do is they need to drive in accordance with the posted laws. And in this particular case, you know, even though it's a relatively wide open street, as you've noted, and I mean, it's fairly obvious that, but certain roadways are probably seem to be, or I guess the general underlying desires to drive them faster than the posted limit, especially on a roadway like this where you've got basically subdivision fences lining both sides, so it's got very limited access. There are only a handful of cross streets. So at this point in time, you know, we could investigate the opportunity to put in some permanently mounted driver feedback signs as a means of re-educating drivers, but you know, enforcement is probably going to be a key issue on something like this.
One thing I would bring up to you is that on streets like this in neighborhoods, when they write 18 tickets like that, it's probably 18 tickets to people that come out there every day or people that live out there every day. So it's not like you're hitting traffic on Western or Penn where it's, you know, 20% of the city or whatever goes through it. So when officers go out and look at this area and work this area periodically, they usually hit the same people. They usually hit people that live in the area, and then that generally slows it down. So luckily, if you did a traffic study on the people that's using the street, it's probably the same people every day. And so sometimes just them being out, writing 18 tickets, working for 4 hours, and then doing stuff for the next few weeks is enough to help slow people down until they start building more, and then you have more people move in. But so that's, you know.
What's feasible with your manpower? How many times can you re-hit the area? I mean, what's the frequency? Is it once a month, maybe? Is it? I don't know what's effective. So I would just look.
There's some areas of the city that officers work every day. I drive Western between 150th and 164th, and nobody speeds because there's a couple officers that literally write tickets every day there, and everybody knows it. So, but on areas like this, like I said, now that our motorcycle officers know about it, I was talking to them yesterday, you know, they weren't aware of this because there's just so many of these being built. And so they're like, you know, that's a place we'll come back to regularly. So, but, you know, as far as putting a time and a date, as far as every day or hour, I can't do that, but I can say that it'll be done at least weekly.
So what you're saying is because it's mainly local traffic, now that the word's out, hey, watch out, you should see a decrease in the speed.
That's generally what we get in these areas. And like I said, it's amazing when you, as an officer, if you work these areas, you know, it's one or the same person hasn't already gotten two. It's just generally the same people that are constantly speeding. So.
Okay. You have something else, ma'am?
What is the method by which we get a next round of if what we do today is working or not on this stretch, and in 90 days, in 120 days? How do we know if what we do works?
Would it be possible to table this item for 30, 60, 90 days, get some feedback as far as if the officers are making a difference in that area, see if the speeds are coming down, because I think that's what the goal is to get the drivers to slow down.
If I may, the accident happened in July. We've had Sergeant Epperly out there with his folks patrolling. It does make a difference, but that was in July, and they've been out there on and off, and we're in November now, and the study was done in October, still showing speed. This area from the north coming down, you would not believe the people that cut through this road to go on out 122nd. They get off Kilpatrick, head on out that way. That's the way they go. There's a lot of folks that use this road.
Mr. Henderson, so the council road is blocked off, so it's pretty natural that you'd have a lot more increased traffic on this road.
Yes.
So I think that, so it makes sense that you have more people coming through. And that also, Barry, I think that construction is going to be going on for a little while, and so waiting for next month or 2 or 3 months down the road, we still won't have good long-term data because we're going to have an unusual traffic load on this road because of the construction. Council's blocked off from 122nd to this northern outlet where Pebblestone gets onto Council.
Yeah, and just for your information, our count is based on Council Road being closed. Our counts were conducted after that.
Okay, sir, did you want some? Do you have something to say?
Question, if these are approved, if these stop signs are approved, what about ringing them with LEDs so that they're more visible for the short term to alert people that these are new, they need to be adhered to?
We would have to order some for that because the only ones that we have been deployed, so we'd have to probably order a couple others, but we can certainly do that.
Well, but I think what the point is to make notice that there's now stop signs. You have the red flag things that you put out there on the stop signs, and you put signs, temporary signs up front with red flags or something saying stop ahead and stuff like that. So I believe that there is something you do to notify the general public of a new stop sign, correct?
Yeah, typically on something like this, we'd install stop ahead warning signs, and we can put some high-level warning devices on top of them, flags or something like that.
That's exactly right. I'm looking for something that better brings the visibility up a lot more because this is going to be new and people just aren't going to pay attention since it's been that way forever. Now you've changed something.
Right.
Okay.
Good idea.
I have another question. How long would it take to get the stop signs installed? Because my question is, if we're waiting on yield signs coming out of the addition and we haven't had a chance to evaluate their effectiveness, what good is it to put in stop signs at this point if it's going to take 3 or 4 months? That's my concern. And I think we really need to delay our decision until we get some more answers.
Well, ma'am, I believe on the yield sign it was to give proper marking for what was already occurring. So coming out of the private area, they already knew that they had to yield to the main road. Oh, okay. So you're thinking that because it wasn't marked yield, they might have been going out into the road.
Yeah, I think we have to consider all sides of it.
Okay.
And we know what the manual says about yielding, but many times people do not yield to the person on the right, to a lane, or otherwise.
Understood. So what you're saying is let the yield signs go up and see if there's any change to that intersection, and let's wait and see, okay? Thank you.
You guys know that I'm not big on adding stop signs based on my past votes, but I think our real issue here is the site decision distance and that people are not observing the 25 mile an hour speed limit. And I don't think that stop signs generally do a whole lot to slow down traffic, but I think there's a greater chance we're going to do good by adding the stop signs here then there is a chance we're going to do something bad.
Okay. Any other further talk on this item? We have a motion pending. Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner George to approve item 5E, seconded by Commissioner Witcher. Can I have your votes, please? Item is approved. Okay, citizens from comments, any other further comments?
Does that stand, the decision is only around stop signs? There was no motion on doing anything about speed on the rest of the stretch of that road. Is that?
Yeah, it was just the four-way stop at that intersection.
Okay.
Did you want to say something about it?
No, I was going to say, because, well, we'll continue to work with our colleagues in the police department as far as having enforcement done in the area, because, typically studies will show that, stop signs will affect traffic speed right around the area where they're installed, but you get away from the intersection and their effectiveness is rapidly diminished. So it'd be prudent to continue to monitor some of the sections north or south of that location, even after the stop signs go in.
So a follow-up to ourselves will be maybe in 90 days, we do another speed study north or south of the stop signs?
We can certainly do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, reports and other items from the commissioners. Commissioner Witcher?
Nothing to report, sir.
Okay, Commissioner Newton?
Nothing to report, sir.
Commissioner Hale?
Nothing to report.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Oh, I had a question from one of my residents in regards to the city bus system. And I said I didn't know if they came under the purview of the commission or not. Okay.
No, but welcome to ask your question.
Okay. Well, I referred her to the action line in regards to her concern. It's about some type of renovation of the restrooms, and therefore they have porta pots, and the porta pots are not clean, and so forth.
That's a good action line item. Mm-hmm. And then the city will defer it to the proper area. Right, okay?
The other thing is the school zone on Northeast 63rd has been removed. We took action on that a couple of months ago.
Right. Which is a good thing, right?
Good.
Okay. I thought maybe you were pointing a finger at it. It's been removed. Very good. Commissioner George.
I just have a question. Stuart, maybe. It was just added a second left-hand turn from Memorial onto MacArthur, turning left, which was needed big time. The way the lines are drawn, though, the inside lane, which used to be the only lane that you can make a left turn, turns into the inside lane. There's 3 lanes there that you can turn into. It turns into following what I'm saying? I should have a diagram for you. But basically, it turns into the left-hand turn lane to turn back to get on. And so it seems like it should go out to the middle lane, and then the right lane go to the slow lane. Follow what?
Because now they have to merge right.
Now they have to get right to get out of the left turn lane.
Which is the lane this right lane. That's a good point.
Yeah. So, I mean, they did paint the dotted lines, but I don't know if they're
They went to
correct
the
or
wrong
not.
one.
If you just take a look at them for me, I'd appreciate it. They seem like they're off the lane, but
Good point.
so that's all.
Okay. Now to Commissioner Yunkel. Okay, I have one thing. Let me just ask. You did have something. Pardon me.
I did have something.
Yes,
There were, and this is about last month's meeting. It was primarily a taxi meeting. What is the process, or where are we? I understand changes are underway for Section 56. I'm unfamiliar with any, and I apologize, I'm just not astute on it yet. Hope to be. Where is that? Because I felt like we were a little remiss in really knowing where we could have guided that meeting a little bit.
Staff is working on revisions to Chapter 56. We're trying to get a version together right now that city staff is happy with before we bring in the industry and get their comments. Because when we rewrote these ordinances a few years ago, and we tried to bring industry in a little too early, and it turned into too many cooks in the kitchen kind of situation. So we're trying to get a version that staff is happy with first.
But there's no major change items that's in the works, like we did years ago, where we revamped the whole process for application.
It's a total revamping.
So it is a total
There
revamp?
have been some significant issues since the revisions a few years ago. We've seen a huge increase in the vehicle for hire industry. You've noticed we have a lot more taxi companies, a lot more limousines, and the rules on regulating the limousines in particular is very lax. So we need to tighten that up quite a bit.
Okay, so going back the other way, just a hair of getting a little bit more regulation into the industry, is what you're saying?
Right, because right now all we have are, for categories, are taxis and other. So if you're not a taxi, then you're an other, and there basically aren't any rules for the other category. So
Right.
taxis are the only one that are...
Which we found out in the subcommittee. We had the limos, we had the horse carriages, and then the little petty bikes.
Yeah.
And we found out, well, we're part of that too, that we monitor that.
Right.
So all those issues, you're saying that's being looked at of what proper regulation.
We also have shuttles, the airport shuttles, medical
And now medical transit, those came up, that's right.
So all of these different categories need to have specific rules.
Okay, and then once you get that and you all kind of agree, then we'll probably go back to another subcommittee like we did the last time and bring in industry from all those different areas, and then go from there, just like we did the last time.
Correct.
Okay? Is that what you're looking for? Very good. Thank you, ma'am.
On that same thought, would it be an opportunity as you get closer to having things finalized for us to have some kind of study session, maybe like an hour and a half before our meeting on a Monday, somewhere, where you could put together what you're doing and maybe educate us into how things work and how things are working and what it is now and what you want to change it to, just so we can maybe have a little input if we think we might.
Yeah, and the last time we did this, we had like a vehicle for hire subcommittee of this body, and so they were the ones that actually went to the meetings, and then they would report back to the body as a whole about what they were working on and the changes they were making.
Right, and that's how it started, was the city came to us, said, okay, this is what we're thinking, by giving us a draft, and then they were all out there, and they all were like, well, we want to be part of it.
Yeah.
And that's when they said, okay, let's have a subcommittee, and I think we had 3 from here.
Right.
That would meet with industry in the city.
That's a great way to do it. I'm just saying, if we could get all the group just to help educate, this commission is just about 50% new, and at least personally, I am not up on all the rules and regulations.
Well, and that's something that...
And I think it would just help me anyway on where the commission is on, because that's a big issue. It seems like
And I don't know how we do that,
issue we have.
rules of order.
Yeah, we'd have to convene, since there'd be a quorum present, if all of the commissioners are present.
So we could put it at the end of a meeting
Right.
as an action item, and that's how it was, I think, was, okay, here's this draft, this is what we're thinking, and it was at the end of the so everybody could leave. And then, like here, we would just throw out a couple points, and it would be that kind of meeting, and that's how it was.
Okay.
It was just an item on here, here's a draft thing, we talked about it, what was changes, and then that's when we said, well, this is bigger than just us meeting here for half an hour, and it turned into a 2-year twice a week, every 2 weeks. We met for about an hour to 2 hours every 2 weeks for about 2 years.
Fantastic, thanks.
Okay?
Okay,
Commissioner
one
Wilcox?
final thing.
Yes, ma'am.
Any update on the bicycle routes? I notice more and more signs are going up, and in my area on Spring Lake, they have,
So the signs are going up, you seeing?
right,
Very
says
good.
that bicycles can use full lane, and they
Which
have
is the
bike-
timeline that they talked about, that in October it was going to start, because the city had to go out and buy almost 600 new signs, because the first purchase was incorrect signage. And that was over the summer, and then city council had to expend the funds to get the new signs, and then the last report we had was in October we'd start seeing them. So you're starting to see them.
Starting to see them, but I also see bicyclists riding on the wrong side of the street. And I don't know when the education part is going to start.
Which is correct, that they talked about that once the signs start going up, that there would be some education going out in the print and the TV. So if we could just follow up on that and see when that is going to start. Now that the signs are going up, when is that education going to start? Because we all know that once the education hits, we'll start getting calls too. Yeah. Okay, very good. Any other discussion item? What I was asking Mr. Chai to check is, I believe that in December we vote for chair and vice chair. So if you'd like to be considered for, or throw your name in there, think about it, we'll bring it up next month for chair and vice chair. I think it's next month, but it may be January. We'll see. Okay, did you have some, Jill, did you have anything? Mr. Chai, did you have anything left?
The only thing I have is, I'll pass it out, it's the meeting schedule for next year, so it's got all the dates on it, so you can mark your calendars now.
Did you have your Friday? Yeah, there's the one Friday in January. Okay, any further items? Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn from Commissioner Witcher. We have a second. We have a second from Commissioner Jenkins. Vote. All right, and we are out of here.